Beyond Depression. That's www.aplaceofhope.com. Hope is alive and well. People can and do change.
Hey, what a great day to do a depression seminar. I mean, isn't it? Yeah. We prayed for rain. Good to have all of you here today. My theme verse for this morning is in Ephesians. It's chapter 5, verse 29. It says, when you talk, do not say harmful things, but say what people need. Words that will make others be stronger. People get misguided in what to do when they're depressed. And why I feel passionate about what we're doing today is because I think people suffer too long, and we wait sometimes too long, or we get real misguided. And so today we want to narrow that down and not be misguided. When we put together the book, Moving Beyond Depression, which is about our 14th book, what we wanted to do was create, and this was our purpose, we wanted to create the best possible handbook for the lay people on planet Earth. That was our mission in writing that, our purpose in writing that book. We believe to treat depression successfully, you've got to take a whole person approach. Well, what's that mean? A whole person approach? Obviously, I don't use the word holistic or because it gets so confused. I never want to be tossed in the New Age camp. I never want people to misunderstand. So I say whole person. I know we've got to touch into the emotional, the physical, the nutritional. We've got to touch into, obviously, the body chemistry, our relationships. We've got to touch into our intellectual side and obviously our spiritual side. The people who tend to recover from depression long term will say, you know what? It was that spiritual side that kept me focused to keep me going. But, in 1952, we started really the first real chemical interventions for depression, the pill approach. Now, we'd toss people off cliffs, spun them on stools until their ears bleed, and now we said there's got to be a better way, and it started in 1952 from France. They started saying the pill, or a pill. And that was the first family of drugs. Now today, how many of us have seen ads on TV for Paxil, Prozac, Celexa, Effexor, Rimron, Milbrut? They're on TV now, aren't they? Isn't that interesting? That we can, some different opinions about that. I have a few. And now, the National Institute of Mental Health tells us that at least 1/3 of the people with depression are not getting the treatment they need. So despite all this, people are not really getting what they need. Then they go on to say, in a recent survey, that about 2/3 of people suffering from depression are misdiagnosed. They're really misdiagnosed. Now, there's a lot of different forms of depression. And today, this is not in any means an academic presentation. And we're not going to talk about all the different forms of depression. Here's what I found out. If you're depressed, you know it. Something's off. And in the first few chapters of the book, Moving Beyond Depression, we've got surveys and checklists for you. And I don't want to spend today just going through checklists with you. But people know when they're depressed, except for men. Men don't always get it when they're depressed. Have you noticed that? No? It was a guy down here who said, no. Well, actually that's probably changing, and I'm somewhat joking with you today, but we have different ways of dealing with depression. Men tend to deal with it differently, throw ourselves maybe into work. We do different things. Anger, we throw ourselves into work, but we're doing different things in order to try to cope with depression. And we all have our unique ways of coping with it. I'll tell you what I believe. I believe there are a lot more people who are depressed, and maybe it's getting labeled as something else. And they are drowning it in an addiction. From our experiences, addictions are the fastest growing area of our work. And we live in an addiction promoting culture, don't we? our state tells us that gambling, alcohol and drugs is always up there, but gambling and sex addiction are our two fastest growing addictions. Now, the thing about an addiction is it creates more depression, doesn't it? Absolutely. Now, I was joking about the rain this morning, but you've heard of seasonal affective disorder? Sad. Anybody feel that today? You do? Yeah. Seasonal affective disorder. Well, the good news is you live in Washington. Washington and British Columbia are some of the two highest, well, in some of the upper states. I think I saw North Dakota on the list as being some of the highest for seasonal affective disorder. Anybody eat more sugar in the winter months? I mean, sugar kind of with Halloween on, are we like inundated with sugar? My little 4-year-old boy just the other night had out his Halloween bag of candy, which I thought I still had hid, but he found. And he was sorting out his candy. I don't know, something about sorting it out, but from this point on, I mean, Halloween on, sugar, sugar, sugar. And you know that about Thanksgiving through the beginning of the year, do you know what the average weight gain is for Americans? It's weight gain season. Do you know what it is? The average weight gain for most of us, but not you guys, is 7 to 8 pounds during this time. So that's why if it's weight gain season now, at the beginning of the year, it's weight loss season. When do you see all those weight loss ads run? Yeah. Jan and New Year's on. What's the number one New Year's resolution? I got to lose weight. Yeah. Well, hey, if seasonal affective disorder, let me run through a few of those symptoms. That's kind of interesting to look at. Usually begins in October, November. For most people, except here in the Pacific Northwest, it might end around March, but March is pretty rainy. Decreased energy, all right. Tiredness and fatigue, okay. Appetite changes, all right. Weight gain, carbohydrate cravings, difficult concentration. Does that sound like anybody? Sadness or anxiety, withdrawal from family or friends, frequent infections, achiness. Do you also know that here in the Pacific Northwest, that most of the research for a lot of the research for seasonal affective disorder has been done right here in the University of Washington? When I was in school, I spent 2 years in the Department of Physiological Nursing at the University of Washington, working in a sleep laboratory. I used to be a research assistant for a sleep clinic there. And you know that during this time of year, how sometimes people's sleep cycles change. You've probably heard of that cycle of sleep called REM, that you need enough of that to really feel rested. So you're eating all this sugar and you're gaining all this weight. What's happening in that REM cycle? And you're like drinking alcohol, it starts to shrink and people get more and more fatigued. Now, for me, when it's 4 o'clock, it's dark. I mean, how's it? Notice how things change? So here's what's being done. Are you familiar with the work that's being done in seasonal affective disorder? Oh, it's fascinating. I've got to show you. Brought something just to show you. In fact, the University of British Columbia in Victoria also has done a lot of work in this area. And I got to tell you, what they're finding is fascinating. They're finding that you've seen these light boxes. I got one. Can I get one? Show you this. I brought all kinds of fun things today. This is a light box for depression.